Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Ultra Confusion Convention review. This time, of course, we are reviewing Andocon, or I should say, I am reviewing Andocon. I'm sure that Zelius will have something to add about our experience at Andocon, but I thought that I would take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about Andocon. This, I believe, would be the fourth year of the true Andocon. If you want to know about the entire Andocon, you'd have to ask Ando himself. But to the public, this is the fourth year that the public gets to participate, to experience Andocon. And of course, as things go, the size of the crowd has increased. I wish that, I think we all wish that it would increase a little bit more, but there was a ton of people there. I think there was over 300 people there. Good times were had, lots of board games being played. Pencil paper RPGs, lots of game creators trying to show off their product, vendors, Twitch stream, game show, 80s game show stuff, panels, all that stuff is happening in Andocon. And I let me reiterate, this should be bigger. It's not for lack of trying, though. I mean, it's a convention that you really need to go to. If you're in the Atlanta area when Andocon happens, you should be there. I mean, it's a fun convention. Now, let's talk about some of the areas I personally think that Andocon could improve in. Now, the first one has to do with the odd layout that the hotel gives to Andocon. Basically, what happens is you have this main hall that has the vendor rooms, the RPG rooms, the tabletop rooms, the Twitch streaming room, and that's it. And then the panel room and the staff room is down a separate hall. Well, actually, it's down two halls. You got to go by the elevator and then take a left and go halfway down that hall to get to the panel room. Now, of course, they've taken great strides to try to make people aware of where the panels are. There's a map in the back of every single Andocon program. But, of course, there are going to be those individuals who never pick up the program, therefore never knowing where the panels are or possibly what panels are going on. Ironically, this is kind of like the absolute reverse of Kanuga, where Kanuga, the only way you could find out about a panel is online. There was no print-out program. But for Andocon, it was like the reverse. You couldn't really find anything out on the internet unless someone created an event on Facebook about their panel, but you can find it in the pamphlet. Now, one thing that that Andocon continues not to be is this is not a panel-driven convention. There's nothing bad about that. It is a community gaming convention. The vast majority of the people who go to the convention are going to go into the board game room as soon as it opens up, if it ever closes. So basically, whenever you want to go in there, and you're going to play games with your friends. You can play tons of different games. There's, as many of you know, there are board games that could take literally hours to play. Then, of course, there's the RPG room, which unfortunately does close down at some point, but you have a lot of pencil and paper, tabletop stuff. They had sanctioned Dungeons & Dragons Adventure League stuff, which, if I had the time, I would have loved to sit down and create a character that I could then carry to other events. But the only times that I actually went into the RPG room was to observe a round of Merchant Acquisitions and then play Craig Campbell's new game, Capers. It was the first time I was actually ever beta tested, so I'm a privileged one of the few, or whatever. Anyways, so as I stated, this convention still is not panel driven, and it's obvious. I mean, it's absolutely obvious. One of the reasons is because of the panel room is basically on its own. It's on its own island. And it's no fault of the convention convention curators and whatnot. If they could just get that one room that basically lines up in eyesight of the registration table, I think that you would probably have at least a little bit of a bump when it comes to panels. One of the things that personally, so this year it felt like they had a bunch of different staff members that were in charge of specific areas, like a tabletop person, a vendor hall person, a panelist person, that type of thing. As the person who is residing over managing the panels, you have to you need to figure out what the hell the schedule is, and then you need to make sure that those people who are supposed to be presenting panels actually present panels. Because what happened to us, was that the individual who's supposed to give their panel before ours on Friday didn't show up until halfway through, and then decided to go an entire hour, which of course meant that we only had about a 30-minute panel because there was a panel after us. So that kind of sucked. However, with the exception of the Nerdburger podcast and opening ceremonies, I'm not sure about closing ceremonies because I had to leave. That room, the panel room, I think at most would have 5 or 6 people in it. Now, of course, Nerdburger, I believe, had 12. Our panels averaged 1 or 2. Once again, it's not panel-centric, so that's fine. But part of me gets depressed because we don't. The panels aren't really publicized. I mean, they're in the guide, and yes, as a panelist, I definitely made sure that people knew that I was giving panels at AndoCon. I think I was the only one who did that, and I think that's the only reason why we had the couple of people that actually showed up. Now, let's move on from the panels. The other interesting thing that I'm not a fan of is that the vast majority of the individuals that come to this convention are going to go straight into that tabletop room or the RPG room, and then they're never going to leave, or they're going to leave it very sporadically. The unfortunate thing is that the vendor hall is actually across the hall from that tabletop room. And I sporadically walked through the vendor hall several times to, I don't want to say dismay, but there's barely anyone over there. Something tells me that people really didn't know that the vendor hall was over there, because there were like comic book stores that were selling tabletop games that were allowed in the tabletop room to sell their merchandise. Now, there were a lot of people who are like, well, the reason why the vendors aren't over there is because they would have to pack up all their stuff at the end of every single day to protect their stuff. However, some of those board games that the comic book stores had for sale are more expensive than the products that the vendors were selling. So if those weren't being stolen, why would the vendor stuff be stolen? Because all they were doing was just throwing a blanket on top of the board games. Woo, security. What really needs to happen, in my opinion, is that they need to basically reformat the open table room and have like vendors on one side or along the back walls, and then have the tables in there. Yes, does it cut down the number of tables? Absolutely. Which is why that room can actually expand. Yes, would it go into the RPG room? Absolutely. But you could move the RPG room into 2 different rooms. One was an overflow room for the tabletop, and the second one was the Twitch room. And this is actually my biggest issue. The individuals who are doing the Twitch streams, I'm sure that they were whatever. They just had this air. Certain individuals there, I'm not going to say the entire team, but there were certain individuals on that Twitch stream team, I don't even remember what the name of the company is, that had like an air of arrogance, like they were better than everyone else. And that it was a privilege to be a part of them playing a board game streaming. Now, part of the reason why I'm so pissed at these individuals and think that they don't deserve to have their own room was the fact that the one time, a named developer was going to utilize their services to broadcast a playthrough, a special 2-hour playthrough of their special game that's starting to gain a lot of traction. They were nowhere to be found. The Twitch guys, not the people who were actually there for the special playthrough. That whole team vanished. I'll get to miscommunication in a second, but one of my issues is that if you're there as the streaming person, people, team, whatever, you are there, you should have your ass there before the convention opens and after the convention officially closes, so that if someone comes up to you and wants to talk to you about streaming something, you're available. But this was also a scheduled stream. It wasn't something out of the blue. Thankfully, we had someone who was able to pick up the slack and at least record the panel or the game playthrough. You're welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So here we go. Because Andocon now has several different heads of whatever, tabletop, the RPG rooms, the Twitch, the vendor hall, the panels, whatever, everybody was their own, they basically had their own island, their own world. There was no real cross communications unless one of the people who is the staff members who is kind of just, you know, poking their heads in at different places, got a message from one person and then manually walked it over to someone else. Otherwise, there really wasn't a lot of communication. If it was through cell phones, then it was not obvious. You, as a panelist, as a guest, and as the convention goer, I felt that you were basically left on your own. Sure, there were times where you saw the staff people, but the vast majority of the time, the staff people were only talking to the people that they were delegated to talk to. Like the guy in the vendor hall. I have no problem with him. But he talked only to the vendors. Say, hey, we're going to open up at this time tomorrow. This is when we're going to close. Do you need me to wash your table so you can eat some food? That kind of stuff. They didn't really care about the people who are walking in and out of there. I mean, yes, they did because they're going to check the badges. But besides that, So here's the deal. My plan, or my suggestion to Andocon 2017 is find out the secret handshake to, of course, get that front room in order to get the panels. Number 2, the individuals that you have Twitch streaming, I can personally say that they don't need that room because they brought their equipment over to the tabletop room a couple times and did their streaming there. So, don't give them a room by themselves. They don't need it. Utilize that room for, you know, like exclusive, maybe like closed beta special peeks at games or something. Or just turn it into another tabletop room. RPG room. You need to move the vendor hall into the tabletop room so individuals can actually see that there are vendors there that are trying to sell their wares. Be it book folding, independent authors, pencil paper RPGs, crafts, little fairy gardens inside of glass containers, artists, whatever. They came there, first of all, they had to pay for a table, and they came there to have fun, but also sell stuff. I think they had some fun, but they didn't sell jack. At least the vast majority of times I went in there because I was just kind of chit-chatting up everybody in there, just, you know, to pass the time when I didn't have anything to do. So, move the vendors into the tabletop room. Move the panels into the front room. I don't know what the secret handshake is, but let's get that done. Twitch people don't need their own room. They can set up randomly throughout the thing. Talk to the people who are doing something at the table. Say, hey, we're going to set up our stuff right here. Because they have condenser mics. It's not like they're picking up sound from the entire room. Those mics are directional. They're only going to pick up the sound that's basically within the table. So it's not a sound issue. So if they say that, they're full of bullshit. I apologize for my language. The last thing is, and I think this could probably be the hardest one to say, but there are certain individuals in the game show group that I believe basically destroy any desire for individuals to really participate in those game shows. Yes, of course, there's going to be people there, but to be honest with you, there are certain people that are part of that group that leave you going, I don't know if I could deal with this individual. They're not bad people, but it's just, I don't know. They seem like fun people, but something about them just rubs me the wrong way. Might be because of the experience that happened last year, where they went a little bit overboard. But yeah. So, should you go to AndoCon 2017? Absolutely. Why? Because you get to meet new people. There's always going to be individuals who are going to have their board game, card game, pencil and paper, and a beta that you might be the first person outside of their group to touch. And they will actually take your criticism. Of course, you got to be constructive. You can't just say, my God, this game sucks. What's wrong with you? And then walk off the table or maybe set the table on fire. That would be a bad thing. There's tons of people to talk to. You can hang out with people. There's so many board games out there. I highly recommend that you go to the panels because there's always panels there. Check out the vendor wares because there's some really cool stuff. I mean, the book folding girl, for God's sakes, I don't even know how the fuck you make that stuff. She had, she was able to, like a Death Star. She basically folded all the pages within a book, and then when you kind of squished it a little bit, it made the Death Star. I mean, I definitely couldn't do that. She did Batman saying no. She did a special AndoCon one. I mean, she needs attention. The writer, which is actually Louis Puster III, who we interviewed recently, was at that show. There's so much to that show that's unfortunately kind of an afterthought. And I'm not saying that you need to push the agenda. We have all this stuff. You need to check it out. But at the same time, I think that individuals might benefit from having a little bit more of a push of, hey, by the way, there are these really awesome vendors, or there's these really interesting panels. Perhaps a large schedule posted on the wall in the game room, because that's where everyone's going to be. And maybe a clock. Though, I don't know. Some people don't want to know what time it is because then they get really depressed or really excited that they got through a game really slow or really fast. So, go to AndoCon 2017. It's going to be sometime in March. I don't know if they have an exact date, but if they do, you can always go to andocon.org. So, for myself, Charlie, it's been a pleasure to give you a review of AndoCon 2016. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but this is definitely a convention that I personally will continue to go to because I always find out about cool new board games, interesting new independent projects, and of course, I get to meet individuals who are just so freaking awesome that friendships are sure to blossom afterwards. Or perhaps you learn about a gaming group in the area that you didn't know about, and then you can find out some really cool, fun games that you probably would have missed if you hadn't gone to the convention. So why don't you go over to andocon.org and go get your pre-sale ticket, because you know you want to, for next year.